This presentation will be a quick overview of the history of school libraries in the United States. It isn't a terribly long history, but we will take a trip back in time to briefly explore the development of libraries in general. Those of you who've taken Library 300 have covered this information in detail, so this is just a quick review for you and a teaser for those of you who haven't taken 300. The quote on this slide speaks to the importance of the school library, a space that should be present on every campus, elementary through high school. Harold Howe was a former California high school principal and served as Commissioner of Education during the administration of Lyndon Johnson. Throughout his professional life, he was in the forefront of efforts to combat social ills at the school level. Among his other targets were poverty and racial segregation. The school library that's pictured is California Middle School in the Sacramento City Unified School District, and sits just a few blocks away from the college in William Land Park. The library sits at the heart of the campus, is staffed with a teacher librarian, and is an example of a quality school library. Since this presentation is about the history of libraries, I wanted to share a publication with you that has recently become available. It's a 100-year retrospective and history of the California School Library Association, which in effect is a history of libraries in California, and includes a wide variety of information on library services as they developed in our state. I've placed a copy of the book in the reserve section of the library. It's a beautiful edition and well worth a look, so take a few minutes and have a glance through this amazing book. Library history can be traced back as far as the 4th century with the establishment of the Great Library of Alexandria in Egypt. It was a treasure trove of written manuscripts, hand-copied, illuminated manuscripts that were typically created and maintained by monks and were used by the privileged classes. These manuscripts were often as valuable as farms or of houses. It was the ancient world's single greatest archive of knowledge, a place of study that had lecture areas, a zoo, gardens, and shrines to the 9 muses. It is also estimated that it held over 500,000 documents or scrolls. Over 100 scholars lived at the library. It was a tremendous tragedy for all of us when it was destroyed by fire in an attack by Julius Caesar. First used in England in the 1400s and eventually brought to America, the Hornbook, an early print format, was put into the hands of American school children and was used for reading instruction up until the 1800s. It was typically a small wooden paddle with a printed paper pasted on top and covered with translucent horn or mica. The board ended in a handle that a child held while reading. Hornbooks contain the alphabet in capital and small letters, followed by combinations of vowels with consonants to form syllables, the Lord's Prayer, and Roman numerals. By the 1700s, the concept of books created specifically for youngsters was established with the first picture book, Orbis Sensualium Pictus, or The World of Things Obvious to the Senses Drawn in Pictures, by Johann Comenius in 1658. It includes 150 pictures showing everyday activities like brewing beer, tending gardens, and slaughtering animals. It's the ancestor of today's children's literature. In this slide, you can see an image of the title page and a typical page from the book. The invention of the printing press in 1455 promised young people greater access to printed materials. Books were more available for all readers, and literacy rates began to soar. Eventually, publishers like John Newbery, who is shown on the next slide, an English publisher, promoted materials that were both pleasurable and informative for young people. In his first book, published for children, was the Little Pretty Pocketbook. A page of the book is shown in the upper right-hand corner of the slide. Even though he published specifically for children well into the 18th century, books and other learning materials remained expensive and rare for most young people in the United States. It is fitting that the Newbery Award, which is given annually by the Association for Library Service to Children, to the author of the most distinguished contribution to American literature for children carries his name. Although Benjamin Franklin envisioned a library in his academy, widespread public recognition and support for school libraries didn't develop until the 19th century, when state legislatures acknowledged the value of school libraries and began promoting their funding. By 1876, 19 states appropriated funding for school libraries. Two factors, however, limited the overall success of these early efforts to support school libraries. First, the lack of library facilities for maintaining the developing collections within the schools, and secondly, the lack of trained personnel for selecting, organizing, and circulating the books. Materials were often overseen in small classroom collections by individual teachers who couldn't ensure students had access to materials throughout a school, who were not coordinated with other teachers to track library inventories, and who often took the materials from one building to another as they changed teaching positions. Meanwhile, the public library movement was developing in the United States, and trained public librarians reached out to address public school needs. The 20th century was a tumultuous one in which school librarians continued to address the challenges of the 19th century and developed the vision for school library programs in the 21st century. Setting the stage for changes to come was the conversation in the early 1900s on such educational principles as the importance of genuine learning experiences and the teacher as a guide, not a taskmaster. Challenges to 19th century teaching philosophies were an aspect of educational planning as school libraries began their 20th century transformation. In the 1960s, school libraries began the transition from a storehouse of books to a space that included a new wave of audiovisual tools and software. The library was thought of as the hub of the school, where teachers and students came together to get books and other materials. This traditional landscape was print-rich and was oriented toward the print and audiovisual resources. It was a centralized location that was often rigidly scheduled with a single-person staff. The library was typically a quiet, almost empty spot and was usually only open during school hours. Today, in the age of technology, the library becomes network central, reaching into every space of the school and into the home. It is information rich in a variety of formats, with multiple technologies available to students and staff. A flexibly scheduled space offers many opportunities for collaboration, between teachers and library staff that will bring groups of students together for a variety of research opportunities. The library is staffed with both professional and technical staff and is a busy, bustling learning laboratory that also provides online services such as databases and cataloged internet links that students can access remotely. Historically, the primary source for information for a school was an on-site collection of diverse materials and equipment. However, technological changes have increased the quality and quantity of information, creating a need for strong literacy and technology skills, creating new formats and interconnecting worldwide information. The typical collection has changed to include information sources from beyond the school. Today's school library collections include printed materials, realia, which are real things, hardware and software, online databases, and often production equipment. Ideally, the modern school library has a professionally trained staff that includes a teacher librarian, who is a credentialed teacher with an additional school library credential, and one or more library technicians. The teacher librarian manages a library collection that is selected to support the school curriculum, to meet individual student needs and interests, and to ensure students develop information literacy skills within the school's curriculum. This is accomplished by a collaborative teaching model where the classroom teacher and teacher librarian plan together, teach together, and evaluate together the units of instruction that are designed to incorporate information literacy skills into content areas. Trained school library paraprofessional staff is essential to successful programs that contribute to student learning. The Model School Library Standards for California Public Schools, kindergarten through grade 12, are recommendations that were adopted by the California State Board of Education in 2010. The standards state that the school library is staffed by a team consisting of a credentialed teacher librarian and paraprofessional support staff. This is the basic building level staffing for an effective program. The standards incorporate information literacy skills at each grade level. Students learn to access, evaluate, use, and integrate information and ideas found in print, media, and digital resources. This makes it possible for them to function in a knowledge-based economy and technologically oriented society. The publication also includes school library program standards, which represent minimum expectations for a school library to meet so that students will be able to achieve the library standards. There are numbers indicated in each library program area, staffing, access, resources, that provide the concrete foundation needed for effective learning and are intended for all schools, elementary, middle, and high school. There is a link on D2L to the online version of this important document. This would be a perfect time to go to your textbook, Where Do I Start?, and have a look at the section in Chapter 1, which is about the mission of the school library. Your first assignment is to write a mission statement for a school library, and the information and many examples in this section will be of great assistance to you. You may select a library at any level, elementary, middle school, or high school. If you are working in a school, you should consult the school's mission statement and make sure the one you write for the library is compatible. Well, that's all for now, so stay tuned, and I promise I will be back.